Hello, I'm Kiki or Kieran, and today we are reading the one-shot Past Loves and Current Problems. This fic has since been orphaned, so the original author cannot be linked. Nonetheless, it stands at a tad bit over 3,000 words, and the link is in the description. Without further ado, here is the summary. Minako discovers Greek mythology, and Ray is the one suffering under it.
Ray sighed and scribbled some notes on her worksheet. The study group, or more like study duo, had assembled at their normal hanging out spot in Crown. Ever since they graduated, they were really only Ami and Ray who used it to study, since they were the ones to attend university. Usually the others wouldn't bother showing up, since they knew the two students needed their peace and quiet. But from time to time, Usagi, Mako, or Minako would grace them with their presence. This time it was Minako, who was mostly preoccupied with her vanilla milkshake. She chewed on the straw, obviously bored out of her mind. She had poked fun at Ray 5 times during the meeting, and she feared if she did it more, she would end up as a fried shrimp. So she settled on for something harmless and glanced on the table. There were books scattered everywhere, and she silently thanked the gods she had never had to deal with this anymore. Her eyes hung on one book in particular, though. "Ami, what is this?" she asked curiously, pulling one of them out the pile. The cover was something Minako was surely interested in. After all, there's a big picture of naked people in Renaissance art on it. Ami narrowly managed to keep her pile from collapsing as Minako flipped the stolen treasure to a random page. "What the?" Minako murmured and flipped again. Ray looked up from her own notebook. Minako was interested in a book that wasn't about idols or gossip or basically anything else that has to do with music was a rarity. "That's not Japanese or English. That's... Ami, what is this?" She held the book open directly in Ami's face, upside down. There were strange letters and signs printed all over the pages, next to pictures of sculptures and ancient temples. Ray glanced briefly and looked at Ami in surprise and astonishment. "I didn't know you were studying Greek." "Greek?" Back and studied it more carefully. "I thought it was interesting and must fascinate me," Ami explained and took another book out of the pile. "I also started Latin." Ray was quite impressed with her studious friend. Her Catholic school had forced all their students to take at least one course in Latin, and even though Ray was very good in all her other subjects, she could never grasp the mantra of the dead language. But she had found it interesting nonetheless. Minako, not being able to decipher a single word on the pages, turned her attention to the pictures instead. One in particular had caught her interest, and she excitedly shoved the book in Ray's face, pointing at the image. "Hey, that's Venus!" Minako was pretty proud of herself that she'd recognized her mythological counterpart. Ray wasn't even able to look at the picture because Minako pulled it back afterwards. "Actually, that's Aphrodite. Venus is the Roman..." Ami started to explain, but Minako waved her off. Same thing. Wow, she's getting it on with that god. He looks quite handsome." Ami gave Ray a nervous glance. Ray paled. She did know some bits about Roman and Greek mythology, thanks to her Latin course. If Aphrodite was portrayed getting busy with a god, the chances were high that that god was... "My, what a coincidence!" A flowing voice disrupted them, and Ray was sure she'd never been more thankful for Michiro and Haruka walking towards them for appearing without their usual swirl of rose petals. Ray breathed a sigh of relief. Mythology would soon be forgotten as soon as Minako and Haruka were gushing about the latest Disney movies and... "Ami, are you studying Greek? I'm impressed." Michiro took the book out of Minako's hand, who snapped "I wasn't finished yet," at the older woman. "Ah, the Affair of Ares and Aphrodite. A true classic," Michiro commented and started reciting lines on the text in ancient Greek. No one was surprised at Michiro being able to read it. They would have been surprised if she were able to, but Minako's attention was focused on something else. Her head turned toward Ami, starting to ask questions in an instant. "Ares? As in Mars?" Ray just wanted to die on the spot. She had feared this moment would come one day. Now it had happened. Michiru handed Ami back the book, and Minako immediately grabbed it again, observing the picture a bit more closely. Minako hastily looked at her, but Ray avoided her gaze. Ray and I had a love affair? Ares and Aphrodite had one, not us, Ray grumbled pointedly and didn't look Minako in the eye. With a curse, Ray noticed that Michiru and Haruka had already left. Leave it to the elders to show up, make a scene, start shit, and then leave without anyone noticing. Minako was like a confused puppy on ecstasy, not knowing who to pay attention to. Her focus drifted from Ray to the picture, then to Ami, and back to Ray again. Ami tapped her pencil against her chin, deeply lost in thought. I'd always thought a lot of myths here on Earth were inspired by the Silver Millennium. It could be that the two of you had... Ami! Ray blushed madly, and the girl in question flinched and apologized. Geez, no reason to get so defensive, Minako growled and turned her attention back to her milkshake. The rest of the study went pretty normal, except that Minako was much quieter than usual. Ray casted a wary glance back at Minako every now and then. The girl was definitely plotting something. Ray could basically see the gears in her head grinding against each other. She didn't know what was going on in that head of hers, but she's sure she wouldn't like the outcome. With a sigh, she'd return to her studies, wishing to forget the awkwardness of past love affair to vanish as soon as possible. The next morning, Ray was sweeping the steps of the shrine as usual. The peace and quiet did wonders for her mind and calmed down, making sure she forgot everything that happened yesterday. She was sure Minako had noticed that she had a rather interesting interaction with this myth, but she also knew there was going to be a continuation of that conversation someday. But now, the only thing that existed for her was her shrine, the leaves on the ground, and the soft wind that occasionally swept through the trees and played in her hair, and where are they? And the very familiar voice that snapped her out of her peaceful trance. Ray blinked a few times before she could locate the origin of the disturbance. She sighed, turned around, facing Minako, who's standing right behind her. Who? Ray asked in confusion, but Minako only crossed her arms. You know who? No, I don't. I might be a psychic, but your mind is an enigma even to me. Ray huffed and was about to return to her work, but Minako didn't let her. In a theatrical gesture, Minako whipped a sheet of paper behind her back. There was something that looked like a genealogy scribbled on it. Ray had trouble deciphering the handwriting, but she could make out two distinctive names. Ray looked a bit surprised before addressing the girl in front of her again. What do you want with Ares and Aphrodite genealogy? Minako eagerly pointed towards the two gods' offspring. Phobos and Deimos. Oh, and Harmonia. Ray narrowed her eyes in confusion. I don't understand. Are you demanding custody over two crows? And I don't know a Harmonia. This was getting ridiculous. Ray snatched the scroll out of Minako's hands to take a better look at the note scribbled there. She turned towards Minako incredulously and addressed the younger woman. Did you scan all through Greek myths and search for Aphrodite's lovers? Minako looked back at her guiltily. Ray sighed and rolled her eyes. Of course that's the reason you'd actually read something for once, she murmured, and examined the various notes Minako had scribbled down. There were notes on the side. A lot of Aphrodite's myths. Her birth from Sappho, when Ares lost her hand to Hephaestus, their love affair that is decorated with tiny little hearts, and the time Ares killed Adonis out of jealousy. Ray knew Minako did this to prelude for an actual question. She raised her eyebrow at the blonde and waited for her to finally ask. So, Minako began, noticing Ray was expecting her to start. So? Ray repeated and leaned on her broom. The blonde fidgeted around a bit, unsure how she should proceed. Ray was surprised that the topic actually seemed a bit touchy for her friend. She observed She observed her a while before she couldn't take it anymore. Minako, just ask the question, she demanded, and finally Minako seemed to step out of her brief uncertainty. So, was there something between, she awkwardly pointed between the two of them, and Ray took a deep breath. Mars and Venus? She finished the question for her friend, and Minako nodded, curiously expecting the answer. Ray thought for a second and looked at the ground nonchalantly, picking up her duty again while trying to let the topic appear casual. I thought you were the one with the most memories. She swept a few leaves away, hoping that Minako didn't notice the tense in her hands clasped on the broomstick to the point of hurting. I know about our missions, our duty, and all that stuff, but almost nothing about their private lives. Minako looked saddened while saying those words. Ray arched an eyebrow and continued sweeping. What do you want to know? She asked. What does it matter? It doesn't change anything. They haven't talked about Silver Millennium for a long time. Crystal Tokyo had been their main focus ever since Chibiusa and Galaxia, and secretly, Ray wanted to leave the past in the past, but it seemed there were still things left unsaid. Just curious, I guess. Minako crossed her arms before her chest and looked up past Ray in the sky with an expression that made her seem so much older than she actually was. It was very unusual for them to see this thoughtful, adult side of Minako, for it was mostly overshadowed by her overwhelming enthusiasm for everything trivial. But when it came to the surface, it made Ray wonder if she actually knew her best friend at all. It doesn't have anything to do with, she started, but the hand on her shoulder stopped her words. Minako was looking at her again with those painful, mature eyes that she both admired and was scared of. The grip she held on her shoulder was gentle, yet forceful enough to draw her in completely, focusing solely on her. Can you please just tell me? Minako almost pleaded, and Ray stopped sweeping. Ray sighed, lowered her head, looking anywhere but Minako. Yes, they had something. The hand on her shoulder dropped and went back to Minako's side. Wow, were they in love? She asked carefully. Ray shut her eyes. Now the cat was out of the bag. It didn't matter anyway. I mean, I can only speak for Mars, but yes. The air was filled with tension as the words sunk in. Minako was deeply lost in thought, and Ray tried to avoid her gaze as good as possible. For Ray, the memory of her former incarnation's love affair wasn't easy to deal with, especially since it had forced her to come to terms with her own feelings for her friend. Even though Ray and Mars's weren't the same, she was sure her feelings for Minako had been on the not-so-platonic side, even before she remembered that particular part of their lives. Under normal circumstances, she would have never opened that can of worms, but in the end, Minako had a right to know. The blonde in question stared at the ground. I'm sure Venus loved Mars as well, she said with a soft yet sad tone in her voice. It seemed melancholic about the memories of love she never experienced, a love she had only gotten to know a mere minute ago. Ray didn't like seeing her like this. Something else was troubling Mina and weighed heavily on her mind. Ray finally put the broom aside and laid it down on the floor. Now it was her time to gently lay a hand on Minako's shoulder and make her look at her. What's up? I don't like this look on your face, she said, and nudged her head towards a nearby branch. Minako nodded and went with Ray. Ray. Promise me not to laugh, Minako asked her as she sat down right next to her. Have I ever? She tried to soothe Minako's worries. She didn't laugh about the serious matters when someone needed her, and this time it was both. Minako took in a deep breath and started explaining. It's just that, I told you about Adonis, she quickly corrected herself, and Ray nodded. Minako had mentioned once, when they talked about her Sailor V days, how he tricked her and used her, and how he cursed you. Minako nodded and leaned forward, resting her elbows on her thighs and clasping her hands. He told me that my love would be hopeless for all of eternity. She sighed and started fidgeting with her fingers. When Ami mentioned that maybe in my past life I was able to find love, and when you confirmed it, I guess it made me happy. Ray knitted her eyebrows. Why would that make you happy? Because the past is all I have. Love is something I will never have in this life, so Ray cut her short and asked sincerely, what makes you think you'll never have love? Minako looked up at her, quite incredulous, and obviously not understanding what Ray was getting at. Because he cursed me? We talked about this 3 seconds ago. Her arm lashed and vaguely gestured into the air. And let's face it, up until now, all my attempts at love had ended up miserable, she added in a sour tone. Ray thought about it for a moment. It was true, many of Minako's past crushes had ended up dead, or had left her for someone else. Higashi, Toshio, Alan, Yaten, only a few names in the very long list of Minako's failures. Ray crossed her arms and leaned back, sternly looking at the blonde. Technically, he said you'll always choose duty over love, not that you'll never have it. She scoffed and Minako sighed heavily. Yeah, but duty and love have to be in the same sort of relation, and I will date Usagi, Minako said, but Ray shook her head. I wasn't talking about Usagi, the shrine maiden clarified, and Minako looked at her for a few seconds before her face brightened up. She grinned at Ray, who looked unaffected and leaned back as well, stretching her arms and legs before settling down in a comfortable position. You mean I need someone who'd understand my situation as leader? Someone who would never make me question my devotion or would support me with my duties? Minako grinned at Ray, noticing the hint of amusement in the shrine maiden fighting off a small blush. Ray exhaled and flared her nostrils. Minako took that as a sign of approval and made herself more comfortable. One last question. Minako pulled out the sheet of paper again and handed it to Ray, pointing at the name of Adonis. Did Mars kill him in the past? Ray thought about it for a moment. Even though her memories of Venus were mostly clear, that didn't mean she was an expert on the past lives. She was sure she had some memory of Adonis crammed in her head somewhere, but it took her some time to remember. After she sorted out the memories, she began telling. Yes, she did. He was one of Venus's previous lovers and betrayed her. When Mars saw him on the battlefield, she took revenge. Minako stayed silent after hearing this. Sure, it was a lot to take in that the past life of your best friend has also been your lover, who had killed one of your previous lovers, who also got reborn, and cursed you in this life only to get killed by your own hand. Ray let her think and order her thoughts. She also had some stuff to sort out regarding her past and her memories of how they relate to the present, so she would give Minako all the time she needed. And so the sudden silence between them wasn't awkward. It was comfortable and told so much more than 1,000 words were able to do. After a while, the blonde decided it was time to talk again. She leaped to her feet, snatching the paper out of Ray's hand, and started pacing around in the front of the beach while her friend observed her. So, the blonde started. Her voice landed with a certain amount of mirth that made Ray tread carefully. So, the blonde extended her hand and winked at Ray. Do you want a sort of torrid love affair, one so hot they'll talk about it a millennia later? Minako! Ray shouted in feigned annoyance and swatted the offered hand away, standing up on her feet on her own. She tried to act offended, but it was hard to do so when she was mostly happy that Minako was back to her usual behavior, even if it meant being a pain in the ass. The blonde raised her hand in defiance and laughed. Just a question. Take a chill pill, Reiko. You're horrible, Ray scoffed, but Minako wasn't done yet. With that mischievous glimmer in her eye that Ray knew oh so well, she continued her teasing. If you don't want me in the throes of passion, maybe for a movie? She asked while holding her hand out again. Ray briefly looked at it, but crossed her arms instead. I'm not going to watch Adults Love 30 Part 2 with you, Minako. Minako's face twisted in feigned disappointment as she latched onto Ray's arm, playfully trying to drag her towards the exit. Oh, come on, how about it? Us, the legendary lovers, out for a movie night, to discover the long-forgotten love and give it to our earthly... Keep going and I'll say no. Ray growled and yanked her arm free, but then walked toward the shrine, changed her robe into something more casual fit for a movie. All right, I get it. Something else then, Minako murmured and followed Ray, but stopped in their tracks and pulled her cell phone as a sudden idea struck her. Ray noticed that Minako wasn't behind her anymore and turned around, raising an eyebrow in question at the blonde. Let me call Haruka first, though, she said, while quickly dialing the number. Ray was confused. She doubted Minako wanted to have the package deal with Haruko and Michiru while watching a movie with her. Granted, she and Haruko were close, but Ray doubted that Minako wanted Michiru's company. Why? Minako winked at her and handed the paper with genealogy again. Ray looked at her warily, and when her eyes scanned the line of Aphrodite's parents, she had to suppress a groan. Minako grinned and spoke into the phone. Hey, Dad, you owe me 20 birthday presents.
That was so cute. Personally, I'm a big fan of Minako and just the Sailor Moon franchise as a whole. This is my first podfic, so I'm still working out the kinks in both recording and editing, so I hope I can improve with more practice. After all is said and done, thank you for listening.